Hi everyone, lovely to see you all, lovely to be here, and fabulous to be here with my author, Chowra Makaremi, and for this very, very important book at a very, very important time, Women, Life, Freedom, Echoes of a Revolutionary Uprising in Iran. I want to get you started by asking a very simple question. You're an anthropologist, but this book in a lot of ways is made up of micro-histories, which then also dig deeper. Why did you plan to do it in this way, even as we're seeing the long tail of the movement play out?
So thank you for this question, and first I would like to express my gratitude to you, Arpita, for bringing this book to the public in India. I think this feminist conversation needs to take place in the global South, and this is not so the book is in the right place, and also at the right time, because I've been going through sessions that talk about feminist topics and gave me the last days a lot of energy, and I realized that it's not only a question of curating, these feminist topics here at the Kerala Literature Festival. It's because it's the feminist project and political power of change is something that really belongs to the years that we're living in, and that really opens up a kind of window for breathing and seeing a positive way of bringing change and resisting to all the conservative projects that are being imposed upon us. So within this in mind, going back to your question, actually, as an anthropologist, I've been spending the last 15 years studying the Iranian Revolution of 1979, that is also called the Islamic Revolution. I tried to look at how the Islamic Republic as a project and as a form of regime that was the first kind of a state incarnation of political Islam at the time in the late 1970s. So how this was put in place after the 1979 revolution, which was actually the overthrowing of a dictatorship by a people that opened up a laboratory for change. It was a moment where people didn't know what will happen next. They say, we want Estelal Azadi Jomhuriye Islami, we want independence, we want freedom, we want the Islamic Republic. They didn't know what exactly was the Islamic Republic because there had not been any Islamic Republic before, right? In the form of a modern state, and so then with this laboratory, this window opened up in '79. And very quickly closed through specific techniques of seizing power by the clergy, by a fascist state project, the Khomeinism, and by these huge militias, corps of the Guardians of the Revolution, who are all actors of my book, Women, Life, Freedom, right? So what I looked is, and the history of the counter-narrative and the counter-memory of the revolution, of how the Islamic Republic at this extremely conservative, totalitarian first, and now it has changed. We cannot, name it totalitarian, but it was totalitarian in the beginning. So this extremely fascist totalitarian project of the Islamic Republic, how did it came out of this moment of opening and opportunity and anti-imperial fight that was the '79 revolution. But this is not usually the story we have. Usually the story we have is that the Islamic Republic is actually the incarnation of the sovereign will of the population that did the revolution in Iran. And so, there is a continuum, but there is no continuity. There is a rupture here. To understand how this rupture works, we have to go back to archives, to traces, but a lot has been erased because actually the Islamic Republic today needs what I call this fiction of power, that it is the legitimate legacy and the only exclusive outcome of the 79 revolution and the legitimate expression of the sovereignty of the people. So in order to build that fiction of power, they have erased the traces. They have suppressed people, suppressed histories. And I needed to go and find what I call the counter archives. And to do that, I found those little books that were published at the time. One of them called The Fall of Kayhan, which is the major newspaper in Iran. How this major newspaper was seized by the most radical extremist Islamist fringes of Hezbollah right after 79 and became the kind of the mouth of the Islamic Republic. So this little book gave me so much information about not only the Khomeini's project, but also about the functioning of neoliberal media and how this was used in order to serve the theocratic project. So my ambition when the Women, Life, Freedom Uprising came, when I realized that with my perspective as an anthropologist, historian who worked on Iran, I saw what a huge revolutionary potential and radical change it was, but I couldn't predict the future. I didn't know where it would go and how it would succeed. But I needed to record those events, so that to produce those kind of, archives of resistance that would also serve the historians of the future. So my idea was to write the book that I would have loved to have if I was a historian and writing back on the Women, Life, Freedom Uprising. But also, just another thing is that these uprisings, there were many images and they circulate through social media, and we all had them on our walls, so they were viral, we remember them, but there are as many they were ordered differently for each digital identity. You and I and another people, and even if I have a few digital identities, I wouldn't have them in the same order. So the algorithms created those spaces, those walls on social networks that kind of divide us because they don't allow the creation of a common narrative. We see the same images, but we don't see them in the same order. So I needed to put them in the order of these chronicles, in one order, and to build a story that could be a narration that could be shared collectively. But I needed to do that in a very subjective way, because this is not, the ultimate truth. This is not exactly, the dates are correct, of course. It's chronicles. It gives a lot of small details that will maybe not be recorded in bigger history. But I needed to assert a very strong subjectivity, saying, okay, this is how I see those events. We need a collective narrative, but the one who's making that cannot be, an overarching, neutral, objective kind of voice.
Right, about the movement itself, a lot of the book reiterates that while there is this continuum, as you call it, from 1979 onwards, and then there is, of course, this forced rupture through erasures of human lives as well as archives, both. At the same time, you yourself argue in the book that there is something different about this moment. Tell us about that.
Absolutely. So what is different in the Women, Life, Freedom Uprisings is that it is the longer protest that took place since 79. Before that, we had the 2009 Green Movement in Iran, but it lasted 2 weeks in the streets. And the Women, Life, Freedom Movement Uprising lasted 4 months. And also, it's the other uprisings that happened, the 1999 student movements, the 2009 Green movements of democratic reforms, the 2019 uprisings of the suburbs, of the working class suburbs. All those uprisings each time concerned a specific portion of the population. There were also a massive strike workers' strike throughout the country in 2021 and 2020. So all those movements happened, and they always had targeted social groups. But with the Women Life Freedom movement, all these different groups came together, and it was totally across the country, including ethnic minorities, national minorities like the Kurds, the Baluch, the Arab Iranians. It was including men and women alike. It was including middle class and working class. It was in the small cities, in more rural areas, as well as in the big cities, center and periphery. And it's the first time that, because for instance, the Green Movement was a democratic demand of reform really carried by the middle class and the educated middle class in Iran, while the 2019 protests were carried by the working class more. And there was this idea that the Iranian society is strongly divided between a rural, traditional, more conservative population that is the basis of the Islamic Republic. And then you have the more educated, urban, student, women kind of groups that are a minority in Iran, and that they want, Western ideas to be implemented in Iran. But this grill of analysis, this way of seeing things, is not working anymore in Iran. So because all the fragments of the population are now kind of allied within a same demand for regime change, and this is the point. They don't want reform anymore. They don't say, they didn't ask anything to the government. Women Life Freedom wasn't about let women be without their hijab outside. They didn't ask anything. They say, down with the dictator. The other slogan was down with Khamenei, down with the dictator. So what I'm looking at in these chronicles is how burning the veil, taking off the veil, those very feminist demands of equality in the public space, was finding a language of revolt in order to express these demands for radical regime change. And basically what happened is that this uprising, so it brought about three changes. At the level of affects, emotions, at the level of values, and at the levels of national identity, collective identity. Those three pillars that were the pillars of the Islamic Republic were kind of totally shaken and fell apart. Because what the Islamic Republic did was to create atomization and indifference and ruled through that, and people here came together and expressed solidarity. They say that they were with the Kurds, were with the Baluch, were with the people, the Farsi of the center. The Islamic Republic created this ideology of opposition that was reformism, that was based on prudence, on moderation, on the fact that you will never go and oppose the state directly, because this was being radical was being potentially violent. And what the Women Life Freedom Uprising did was to bring back courage, bring back perseverance and stubbornness as collective values on the forefront. And the third thing was collective identities, because I spent 10 years studying how the Islamic Republic was successful in making Islamic Republican identity and Iranian identity coincide exactly. And they did that through figures of the enemy and the martyr. When Gina Mahsa Amini was killed by the morality police, a video of her circulated on the social media, and she was dancing a Kurdish dance in a traditional red dress. And this video was the way Iranian people remembered her. There was a woman who was Kurdish, but she was not an enemy. And she was dead, but she was not a martyr. And all of a sudden, through that fight, women life freedom against the ideology of martyrdom and sacrifice, there was a way of contesting what Iranian political identity was in Iran. And I think that the soil, the geological foundations of the Islamic Republic have crumbled. And now we have a zombie politics. We have a zombie state. And I'm not saying it's going to fall tomorrow, but what I'm saying is that we cannot go back.
So one of the things, well, please feel free to applaud. One of the things that I do want to bring it back to, because so often a lot of it plays out via some sort of discussion around women's bodies. And it's very important from where I'm positioned and where we live. It's so important, even though we might all know it, to keep reiterating that it's the same thing. The fact that Iranian women, I mean, a month ago, the young Iranian woman who walked out in her underwear in the public space, or last week when morality police bothered a young woman about not covering her head properly, and there were videos of her catching, grabbing his turban and covering, which was fabulous. Of course, every time my heart sinks as well, because you wonder what will happen to those young women, because we all know the retribution that follows. But for me, when I speak to my hijabi students at Ashoka University, we talk about it's the same thing. It's actually you choosing to wear what you want to wear, and our right-wing government in certain states now saying, no, you can't come to university in a hijab. It's actually the same problem, and it's about the state trying to control that autonomy, bodily autonomy, but which only women should have over themselves. Do you want to add to that?
Absolutely. This is one of the nerves, actually, of my book, is to really make this clear that it is not about being for or against the veil. The veil is becoming a very efficient, again, grammar of revolt, language of protest. So it's a symbol. And one of the main faces of the Women Life Freedom movement is Fatemeh Sepehri, who's the wife of a martyr of the Iran-Iraq war, and she's fully dressed in hijab, in black chador, and she's fighting since 2017 for the change of the constitution and the change of the Islamic Republic, for the right of women to choose if they want to wear the hijab or not. And now she's in jail, and she's in a very bad condition. And she's recognized as the face of this movement. So it's not about, it's about freeing the body of the woman from that function of being the space where the rule of the law, the laws of the state are being inscribed. And it's the same, forbidding the veil is the same process in terms of we are inscribing our political beliefs and laws on the body of the woman in the public space. So I went back in the book, I'm going back to how the hijab was imposed on Iranian women, actually made obligatory, and forcing the woman to wear the hijab, a very specific kind of hijab, the black chador, was a way to put the whole public space under the authority of a totalitarian state. So it was a way of marking the presence of a totalitarian state for the woman and the man alike. And I always say, when the women, they burn their veil, they take off their veil, and the men applaud them, it's not that they are supporting them, it's because the men don't have any veil to burn. So they are, appropriating this gesture of radical opposition. And I think it's very important in the Iranian context, and it's not only Iran, but in the Iranian context, there has been a social pact that has been built after a decade of terror in the 1980s. Things got smoother because, all the radical opponents have been killed and suppressed, and all the others had been terrorized to silence. And the terror was such that also the social memory of this violence was not allowed. So in this more pacified space, after terror, then there was this consensus that if you don't cross the red line, then you're okay. You can live. As long as you wear the veil, you can fight for equality of right in front of the divorce law, from heritage law, from, etc., etc. So it was like the feminist movement in Iran, they were white. the 1 million campaign signature, it was hundreds of thousands of feminist activists in Iran since the early years 2000. So it's very important to remember that this is not a Western imported kind of ideology of, oh, we're gonna, we're gonna have these women against the hijab because in the press in France they say Iranian women woke up. Iranian women were awake since the revolution, the first demonstration against the Islamic Republic as soon as March 79 was led by women. But the thing was that they strategically chose, they were very organized, and they chose not to confront the state on the hijab because that was the ADN, the DNA of the regime. That was a red line. They went and tried to make change in their everyday. They said, no, forget the hijab. We will wear that hijab. It's no problem. Let us get access to the market, the job market. Let us get custody of our children. Let our testimony in front of a court be worth the testimony of a man and not half of it. And then, we're okay with wearing your hijab because we want change within the red lines. So when in 2022, the Iranian population wanted to confront the regime and say we cannot reform it, we just want to change, then they had to perform the fact that they didn't agree with the social pact anymore and they were crossing a red line collectively. And this is why they choose to get, to take out the hijab and burn it. Because it was the language of saying, we're fed up, we want change, and that's enough. So.
Fabulous. Before I do want to have 5 minutes of questions, but I have a tough question for you. As brief as you want to keep it. Your family's history is also tragically intersected with the beginning back in 79 and now into the... Do you want to say something about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I can say something about that, and it makes sense because Yoda Press has published actually the memoirs of my grandfather, which was my first book that I edited and also added some other writings to it. It's called Aziz's Notebook, and you published it in 2014. So I know this counter history of the Iranian Revolution because my mother and my aunt were both opponents. They were both revolutionaries and both opponents to the Islamic Republic, and both arrested and both killed by this regime. And really, in the book, so it's chronicles, and for every day, the form of the chronicle gives me that freedom to go back in the past and come, in the present, and do these things, and to kind of give an idea of the layered memories of resistance that this Women Life Freedom Uprising is building upon, a very long-term legacy of resistance. And the first chronicle that I wrote was the one of the 18th of October. That is the longer in the book, and this is where my personal history comes in. And this chronicle is about the mothers' movement of justice and truth. And it was kind of the matrix of writing around which the whole book then gets organized, and it was easier to write it. And what I'm saying is that what the Iranian state did is that it suppressed thousands, like dozens of thousands of opponents, maybe hundreds, we don't know. It's like the Syrian regime, we will never know how many. And by targeting those hundreds of thousands of people, they terrorized millions. So I'm working on how the intimate and the political really bound together, because they attacked us as families in our most intimate affective bonds. Because when you have someone in jail, you don't know their fate, you don't know if they're going to be killed today or tomorrow or where they are, then it governs you through fear and cruelty. So I have a first-hand experience of that I'm trying to reflect upon as a way of looking at how terror produces consent. And this is the trick, my friends. It's like terror does not produce only fear. it produces consent. And we can understand the political history of Iran and the reformist project and the 1990s, years 2000, etc., and the actual like calm and stability of the Islamic Republic by this consent produced by terror. So I'm undigging, you know, this kind of underhurt history of the Islamic Republic. And by doing this, in this chronicle of the 18th of October, what I'm looking at is how the families of the victims were the ones who carried on the memory of the radical opposition of their beloved one, who have been killed because they were opposed to the Islamic Republic. After that decade of terror, no one dared to be opposed frontally, directly to the state anymore. It's a posture that didn't exist in Iranian politics, antagonism. What feminism brought back in, through the mothers' movement and through transnational also feminist, you know, politics that Iran is part of, is to bring back antagonism as a valid political posture. You are against and you say, I'm radically against. And what I'm saying also is that this memory of being radically opposed has been in exile within the families for decades, and through the Women Life Freedom movement, it traveled back into society. And so this is also what my book tries to give a sense of, that, the circulation of memories and how it shapes a collective. And now the Iranian society is transnational and transnationally opposed to its state.
There are only 3 minutes, so maybe we take two questions. I saw that hand up first.
I think this question is a little more fundamental, which includes feminism across, especially Middle East and North Africa. But my question is, when you look at the underlying pattern, right, you see that pattern similar in multiple countries across the region, right? So, for example, there's a revolution in Afghanistan because the Soviets and the Americans are fighting. And yes, the people of Afghanistan become a victim to that. And the same with Iran, right? When the Shah regime and US, he was America's puppet, and then people revolted. But across this, with regards to the Tunisian revolution, the Arab Spring, the point here is that although they come to oppose foreign imperial power and... Pardon?
You asked your question.
Yeah. So why is there a reason as to why when they come to claim their freedom, when the people, indigenous people of that place come to claim freedom, why is it that they come with tyranny and dictatorship? Because there have been multiple models across the other places where there were democratic governments established after, revolt. But here there's a pattern seen that, there's a more tyrannical, oppressive government that comes after, freedom from an imperial force. Thank you.
It's a very valid question, but no time to answer.
Although, if I may add one thing, I would want to add that you can't equivocate between the Arab Spring, which has happened in the 2000s, with the Russian-American conflict, which led to, Arab Spring is not the correct example, I think.
No, but after revolution there is
Thank you so much, speakers, for a magnificent session.